Okay, let's do the division of 2 divides the number 5158. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the number outside of the division house, which is the number 2. And then I'm going to produce the multiplication table of times 2. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the first number inside the division house. So the number inside the division house is the number 5158. And the first number is the number 5. That's the first digit. And I'm going to squeeze the number somewhere in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 5 is in between the 4 and the 6. Right here is the number 5. So between the 4 and the 6, I'm going to choose the smallest number. And the smallest number of those two numbers is the number 4. So I'm going to circle the entire expression 2 times 2 equals 4. And I'm going to use those numbers over here. So that 2 that's right there is this 2 right here. And this 2 right here is going to go on top of the number 5, like so. And there it is. And this 4 right here is going to go underneath the number 5, like so. And then we're going to perform a subtraction of those two numbers, 5 and 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. Okay. And the next step is we're going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 1. And we're going to bring the number down so that we now have the number 11. And then we're going to repeat what we just did, which is we're going to squeeze the number 11 in between two numbers on the multiplication table. I can see that the number 11 is between the number 10 and 12 right here. And between the 10 and the 12, the smallest one is 10. So I circle that expression, 2 times 5 equals 10. Okay. And I'm going to use those numbers over here. The number 2 right here is this number 2 right here. This number 5 is going to go on top of the number 1. Like so. And this number 10 right here is going to go underneath the number 11. Like so. And I'm going to perform a subtraction of 11 and 10. 11 minus 10 is 1. Okay. And then I'm going to bring down the next number in the list, which is the next number inside the division house, which is the number 5. This number 5 is going to come down right here so that I now have the number 15. And I'm going to squeeze the number 15, which is, I'm going to repeat what I've been doing. I'm going to squeeze the number 15 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 15 is in between the 14 and the 16, right there. And between the 14 and the 16, the smallest one is the number 14. So I'm going to circle that expression, 2 times 7 equals 14. And I'm going to use those numbers over here. The number 2 is this number 2 right here. This number 7 goes on top of the number 5, like so. And this 14 goes underneath the number 15. And then I'm going to perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 15 minus 14 is 1. And now I'm going to bring down the last number in the list, which is the number 8. I'm going to bring it down so that I now have the number 18. And then I'm going to repeat what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze the number 18 in between two numbers. But, you know, I can see that the number 18 is this number right here. There's nowhere else to squeeze. It's just that exact expression, 2 times 9 equals 18. So I'm going to choose that expression. This 2 right here is this 2 right there. And this 9 right here goes on top of the number 8, like so. And this 18 goes underneath the number 18. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 18 minus 18 is 0. And this is finished. Let's do another example. Let's do this division. 3 divides the number 7407. Okay. You should put the video on pause and try to do this yourselves. And then let's see if you're able to do it. So the first thing we're gonna do is we look at the number outside of the division house, which is the number 3. And then we produce the multiplication table of times 3. Okay, here it is. Okay, once I do that, I look at the first number inside the division house. And the number is the number 7. And I squeeze the number 7 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 7 is in between the 6 and the 9, right there. And between the 6 and the 9, the smallest one is the number 6. So I choose the expression 3 times 2 equals 6. I choose that expression right there. And I use those numbers over here. The number 3 is that 3 right there. That 2 that you see right there goes on top of the number 7. And the 6 that we see right here goes underneath the number 7, like so. And then I perform a subtraction of 7 and 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 4, and I'm going to bring it down so that I now have the number 14. And now I'm going to repeat what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze the number 14 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see the number 14 is right here in between the 12 and the 15. And between the 12 and the 15, which one I'm going to circle? I'm going to circle the smallest one, which is the number 12. So I'm going to circle the entire expression 3 times 4 equals 12. There. I'm going to use those numbers over here. So this 3 that we see right here is this 3 that we see right here. And this 4 right here goes on top of the 4 right here. And this 12 that we see right here goes underneath the number 14, like so. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 14 minus 12 is 2. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now is just repeating what I've been doing, right? I look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 0, and I bring it down so that I now have the number 20. And now I'm going to squeeze the number 20 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see the number 20 is between the 18 and the 21 right there. And between the 18 and the 21, the smallest one is 18. So I'm going to circle the expression 3 times 6 equals 18. And I'm going to use those numbers over here. That 3 that is right there is this 3 right here. And this 6 right here is going to go on top of the 0. And that 18 is going to go underneath the number 20. And I'm going to perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 20 minus 18 is 2. And then I'm going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 7. And I'm going to bring it down so that I have the number 27. And I'm going to squeeze the number 27 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. But I can actually see that the number 27 is this expression right here. That exact expression. There's nowhere else to squeeze. It's just the expression 3 times 9 equals 27. Perfect. So I'm going to choose those numbers to play with them over here. The number 3 right there is this number 3 right here. This number 9 goes on top of the number 7. And this number 27 goes underneath the number 27. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 27 minus 27 is 0. Finish. Okay, let's do An example with two numbers outside of the division house. Let's do this one. 11 divides the number 28, 3, 6, 9. Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the number outside of the division house, which is the number 11. And then I'm going to produce the multiplication table all times 11. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the first number inside the division house, which is the number 2. This number 2. And I'm going to squeeze the number 2 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 2 is in between the 0 and the 11 right here. This is where the number 2 is at. So between the 0 and the 11, the smallest one is 0. So I'm going to choose the entire expression 11 times 0 equals 0. And I'm going to use those numbers, 11 times 0 equals 0, over here. So this 11 is that 11 right there. This 0 goes on top of the number 2 right here. And the 0 right here goes underneath the number 2. Okay, now I'm going to perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 2 minus 0 is 2. Nothing changes. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 8, and I'm going to bring it down so that I now have the number 28. And I'm going to repeat what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze the number 28 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 28 is in between the 22 and the 33. It's right there. And between the 22 and the 33, the smallest one is the 22. So I'm going to circle the entire expression 11 times 2 equals 22. Right there. Now, I'm going to use those numbers over here. This 11 right here is that 11 right there. That 2 right there goes on top of the number 8. There. And that 22 goes underneath the 28. And then I'm going to perform a subtraction of those two numbers. There. 28 minus 22 is 6. 6. So now I'm going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 3. I'm going to bring it down so that I now have the number 63. So now I'm going to repeat what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze the number 63 somewhere in between two numbers over here. The number 63 is in between the 55 and the 63, right there. Okay, and between those two numbers, the smallest one is, between the 55 and the 66, the smallest one is the 55. So I'm going to choose the entire expression, 11 times 5 equals 55. Okay, now I'm going to use those numbers over here. This 11 right here that you see, right here, this 11 is that 11 right there. And that 5 right there goes on top of the number 3, like so. And this 55 right here goes underneath the number 63. Okay, now I'm going to perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 63 minus 55 is 8. Okay, the next step to do is to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 6, and I'm going to bring it down so that I now have the number 86. Now I'm going to repeat what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze the number 86 in between two numbers over here. I can see that the number 86 is right here. It's in between the numbers 77 and 88. And between those two numbers, the smallest one is 77. So I'm going to circle the expression 11 times 7 equals 77. Okay. I'm going to use those numbers over here. So that 11 right there, this 11 right here, is that 11 right there. And this number 7 goes on top of the number 6. There. And this 77 goes underneath the number 86. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 86 minus 77 is 9. Perfect. So now I'm going to look at the last number inside the division house, which is the number 9. And I'm going to bring it down. And now I'm going to repeat what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze the number 99 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. But I can actually see that the number 99 is just this expression right here. 11 times 9 equals 99. There is nowhere else for me to squeeze this number 99. It's just this exact expression. 11 times 9 equals 99. Perfect. So I'm going to use those numbers over here in the division. See that number 11 right there? It's this number 11 right here. And the number 9 is going to go on top of the number 9 right here. And the number 99 is going to go underneath the number 99. And I'm going to perform a subtraction of those two numbers. And 99 minus 99 is 0. We're finished. Okay, let's do this example. 23 divides, let's go with this number. 1, 3, 6, 4, 1, 3. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the number outside of the division house, which is the number 23. And then I'm going to produce the multiplication table of times 23. Here it is. Okay, once I do the multiplication table of times 23, the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the first number inside the division house, which is the number 1 right here. And I'm going to squeeze the number 1 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 1 is in between the 0 and the 23. It's right there. So I'm going to choose the entire expression. 23 times 0 equals 0. And I'm going to play with those numbers over here. That 23 right there is this 23 right here. That 0 right there goes on top of the number 1. And that 0 right there goes underneath the number 1. And then I perform a subtraction of the 1 and the 0 of these two numbers right here, subtraction. 1 minus 0 is 1. Nothing changes. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 3. And I'm going to bring it down right here. So I now have the number 13. And I'm going to squeeze the number 13 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. But I can see that the number 13 is once again in between the 0 and the 23. So the number 13 is right there. So once again, I'm going to choose the entire expression. 23 times 0 equals 0. And I'm going to use those numbers right there over here in the division. So once again, that 23 right there is this 23 right here. And that 0 right there goes on top of the number 3 right there. And that 0 right there goes underneath the number 13. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 13 minus 0 is 13. Nothing changes. Perfect. So now I'm going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 6. And I'm going to bring it down so that I now have the number 136. And I'm going to repeat what I've been doing. I'm going to squeeze the number 136 and between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see the number 136 is like right here. It's in between the number 115 and 138. And between those two numbers, the smallest one is 115. So I'm going to choose that expression, 23 times 5 equals 115. Okay, so the number 23, this is number 23 right there. The number 5 goes on top of the number 6. And the 115 goes underneath that 136 right here. 115. So the number 115 is the number 115. And now I'll perform a subtraction of those two numbers. So 5 to 6 is 1, and 1 to 3 is 2. And 1 to 1 is 0, so that's 0. Okay. So the next thing to do is to bring down the next number in the list, which is the number 4. And there it is. So I now have the number 214. And I'm going to repeat what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze the number 214 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. And I can see the number 214 is right here. It's in between the number 207 and 230. And between the number 207 and 230, the smallest one is 207. So I'm going to circle the entire expression. 23 times 9 equals 207. There it is. Okay. So now I'm going to use those numbers over here. The number 23 is this number 23 right here. This number 9 is going to go on top of the number 4, like so. And the number 207 goes underneath the number 214, right? The number right there, 207, is this number right here, 207. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. So 214 minus 207 is 7. All right, perfect. Okay, now I'm going to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 1. This number 1 right here. And I'm going to bring it down. So I now have the number 71. And I'm going to squeeze the number 71 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 71 is somewhere in between these two numbers right here. It's in between the numbers 69 and 92. And between those two numbers, the smallest one is 69. So I circle that expression, 23 times 3 equals 69. Okay, so the number 23 that you see right there is this number 23 right here. And the number 3 right there goes on top of the number 1 right here. And the number 69 goes underneath this number 71. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 71 minus 69 is 2. All right, we're almost finished. The last number inside the division house is the number 3. So I'll bring down that number. So I now have the number 23. And I'm going to squeeze the number 23 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. But I can actually see that this number 23 is precisely this expression right here, 23 times 1. So I'm going to choose those numbers right there. So once again, that 23 is this 23 right here. And this 1 right here goes on top of the 3. And that 23 goes underneath the number 23. And then I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. 23 minus 23 is 0. And we're finished. Okay, let's do this division. Because the number outside of the division house is the number 999, I'm going to produce the multiplication table of times 999. And this is the multiplication table. And this is mainly to illustrate the steps, okay? So the first thing to do is to look at the first number inside the division house, which is the number 6. This number right here, number 6. And I'm going to squeeze the number 6 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that the number 6 is in between the 0 and the number 999 is right here. This is where the number 6 is at. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to circle the smallest of those two numbers between the 0 and the number 999. The smallest one is 0. So I circle this entire expression, 999 times 0 equals 0. Okay. And I'm going to use those numbers that I circle over here in the division house. I can see that the number 999 is this number right here, 999. And this number 0 right here goes on top of the number 6. Right there. Okay. And this number 0 right here goes underneath the number 6. There. And then I perform a subtraction of 6 and 0 is 6. Nothing changes. And the next thing I'm going to do, I look at the number inside the division house, which is the number 2, and I bring it down. So I now have the number 62. And I'm going to squeeze the number 62 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. I can see that once again the number 62 is in between the number 0 and 999. So the number 62 is there. That's the number 62. It's in between the number 0 and 199. So once again, I choose the entire expression. 99 times 0 equals 0. And I circle that expression. So the number 999 is this number right here, 999. And that 0 right there goes on top of the number 2. There it is. And that 0 right there goes underneath the number 62. And now I'm going to perform a subtraction of 62 and 0. 62 minus 0 is just 62. Nothing changes. Okay. The next step to do is to look at the next number inside the division house, which is the number 8, and bring it down right here. So I now have the number 628. And I'm going to squeeze the number 628 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. Once again, I can see the number 628 is right here again. It's in between the 0 and the number 999. And between those two numbers, the smallest one is 0. So I circle the entire expression 999 times 0 equals 0. So I'm going to use those numbers again that I've been using. So the number 999 is this number right here, 999. And the 0 right there goes on top of the number 8. There. And the number 0 goes underneath the number 628. Like so. Okay. Now I'm going to perform the subtraction of 628 minus 0. And nothing changes. It's 628. Okay. So now, the next number in the list is the number 3. So I'm going to bring it down. So now, you can see that the number is getting bigger. It started with 6, 62, 628, now 6,283. So now, the next step that I'm going to do is just repeating what I've been doing, which is I'm going to squeeze that number 6,283 in between two numbers in the multiplication table. And I can see that the big number, 6,283, is in between these two numbers right here. This is 6,283. And between those two numbers, the smallest one is this. There. Right? So 6,283 is in between the number 5,994 and 6,993. And between those two numbers, the smallest one is 5,994. So I circle that entire expression, and I use those numbers over here. So the number 999 that I have right here is this number right here, 999. And the number 6 goes on top of the division house, on top of the number 3. And this number, 5,994, goes underneath this number right here. So I write down 5,994. And then I perform a subtraction of these two numbers right here. So let's do that. 4 to 3 is 9. So now I have 10. 10 to 8 is 8. I carry 1. So 10 to 12 is 2. I carry 1. So I have 6 to 6 is 0. Okay, 0. That number. Okay. Next step 2. The next number inside the division house, which is the number 7. I'll bring it down right here. So I now have the number 2,897. And I'm going to squeeze the number in between two numbers in the multiplication table over here. I can see that the number is right here. This is 2,897. It's in between the number 1998 and 2,997. And between those two numbers, the smallest one is 1998. So I circle the entire expression. 999 times 2 equals 1998. Okay. So I use those numbers over here. The number 999 is this number right here, 999. This number 2 goes on top of the number 7. And this number right here, 1,998, goes right here, 1,998. And I perform a subtraction of those two numbers. Okay, 8 to 7 is 9. Carry 1. 10 to 9 is 9. Carry 1. 10 to 8 is 8. Carry 1. 2 to 2 is 0. And the last step to do is to look at the last number in the list, which is the number 1, and bring it down so that I now have this number 8,991. And I'm going to squeeze the number in between two numbers in the multiplication table. But I can actually see that the number is exactly this expression right here. So I choose those numbers over here. This 999 is this 999, and this 9 goes on top of the 1. And this number 8,991 goes underneath this number 8,991, right? And I perform a subtraction of those two numbers, and I get 0 because they are alike. Okay, so I finished with this problem. Now let me say something else. Let's talk about the decimal point. When the decimal point is somewhere inside of the division house, not outside, just somewhere inside the division house, the only thing you gotta do is you bring it up and then pretend as if the decimal point is not there. For example, if the decimal point is, say, right here, 6.2, the rest is the same. The only thing you do is you bring up the decimal point and pretend as if the decimal point is not there and work through the division as if it's not there. Nothing changes. So let's say that if the decimal point was instead in between 6 and 2, let's say if the decimal point was in between 7 and 1 right here. It's an example. Let's say that the decimal point is there. The only thing you got to do is you bring it up and pretend as if it's not even there. Work through the division as we just did before. And it doesn't matter what the decimal point is, as long as it's inside the division house, anywhere. It could be here in between 8 and 3, just bring it up. Bring it up. It doesn't matter where it is, you bring it up. But that's only if there's only one decimal point inside of the division house. And in the next video, we're going to work those problems. We're going to see how to solve those problems.